Your name, please,
Roger
and your last name, Roger.
is Knopf. It's Knopf.
Okay. Okay. And Roger, when were you born?
June 24, 1931.
My birthday is June 25th.
Is that right?
A little bit after you, though.
Yeah,
And where were you born?
in Muskegon.
In Muskegon. Did you go to school locally?
In Muskegon Heights, went through high school, all grade schools and high school.
Okay. And did you go to any college?
I went to Hope College right after high school and graduated in 1953.
1953 at Hope College. Okay. And that's in Holland.
Yes.
Okay. Michigan. Okay. And when did you decide, or were you enlisted, or did you get drafted?
I applied for aviation cadets because I knew I would be drafted right after college. And so I went into the aviation cadet program they had at that time.
Okay. And how long is that program?
It's a little over a year as an aviation cadet, but that included the going through navigator training and getting a navigator rating, navigator wings. At the end of that time, then you were commissioned as a second lieutenant.
Oh, okay. So from aviators school, where did you go after that?
And then went to Brooklyn Air Force Base, Mobile, Alabama, as a navigator, and flew C-1, C-74s for a while, and then C-124 transport airplanes.
Okay, I'm going to back up just a little bit here and ask you about when you went in, I assume in the Air Force,
Yes.
correct? When did you go in? Do you remember that?
The date went into, was sworn in January 13, 1954.
Okay.
So that was the time.
Now, did you go in with anybody you knew, or
No,
you were just, this was a decision that you made on your own? And
yeah,
okay, wonderful. Were you married when you went in?
no.
Okay. So when you went to your first duty station, that was where?
Brooklyn Air Force Base, Mobile, Alabama.
Okay. And what was your responsibility there?
Navigating primarily on in the military air transport command and navigating the planes across the Atlantic, generally to Saudi Arabia and back.
Okay. What conflicts were you involved in or war?
In the Vietnam War.
Okay. And where in Vietnam were you?
Okay. I was, two of us from the base in California were sent over, first we were sent to join the 1st Cavalry Division, and then we went over in ships to Vietnam. And we were in the Central Highlands area. The base that they set up was called An Khie, Vietnam.
Okay. And how long were you in Vietnam?
I was with the Army from I think it was July 1965 until end of January 66. And then during 1 month of that time, while we were getting organized for operations, we went to Thailand and we flew day missions in the F-4 because they were short of pilots. Then we came back and did work on ground operations with the 1st Cavalry Division.
Okay. And while you were there, did you see any battle?
We were involved, we were ambushed when we were in the Idrang Valley as part of the 1st Cavalry Division. So that was the main battle that we saw. So it was rather disastrous for our battalion, as they lost 155 men over a 24-hour period there.
Wow.
And, other than that, the flying, very, very occasionally, the planes do not come back. Excuse me.
Now, what was your most memorable experience while you were there? I know you have a lot of them.
Well, yeah, I think as far as flying missions, a couple of them come out. One is when we were tasked to 4 aircraft to come in off the coast and be a distraction for us by the San Juan Bridge area. And it was nighttime, flying night at 500 feet, 500 knots. It took some real navigating to survive that.
Oh, I'll bet.
And another one was where I was leading a 2-ship mission at night, and they said it was near a possible SAM site. And so we took a route that was a diversionary route, not directly at the target. The last minute turned it at it. And everything was going great except that when the flares that went off that we used to illuminate the target showed that it was a complete undercast and we couldn't see the target to do it. And then on the way back, we're just getting started going back, and they called a SAM warning that the SAM had been fired at our 2 aircraft. And fortunately, no problem with either plane.
Now, when you said that showed overcast when you shot the flares, did you just abort the mission then and return, or?
What I did is, it was going to be one pass and get out of there, and what I did is just aim well beyond that to where I figured it was nothing but fields, and got rid of my bombs there. The target is going to be a railroad area, and it was very close to a town there. And I couldn't see dropping bombs into an area that was that close to the town. So.
Right. What were some of your victories while you were there?
Just surviving missions.
That's a victory.
Yeah.
Right.
I had 88 combat F-4 missions.
Okay, where did you go after there?
Went back to California and was instructing new pilots to become combat ready in the F-4.
Um, where in California was that?
George Air Force Base. Yeah, George Air Force Base.
Okay, and that's where?
In near San Bernardino,
Okay.
California. It's up in the high desert area.
Okay, and how long did you instruct there?
See, that was from okay, July '66 to October 1970.
Okay, and after that, where did you go?
And what you were assigned to Yokota Air Base, Japan, and they were forming up their 4 squadrons at that base.
In Japan.
Japan, yes.
Okay, and what did you do there?
That was we were training, getting continued training in the F-4 missions.
And their responsibility there was
Mainly getting the squadrons organized, and then they changed the designation of the squadron we had, the 35th. They sent us to Kadena Air Base, and that was in March of '71, and so we had our operations out of Okinawa, Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, and some of the time we would go to bases in South Korea out of there and help Korean defense.
okay. And how long were you in South Korea?
It was just for a month at a time, and then rotate back to Kadena Air Base.
Oh, okay. So after you did that rotation, then where did you go?
Well, we were still assigned to Kadena Air Base, but they moved half of our squadron back to Vietnam. They flew SAM missions. The rest of us went to Taiwan, and we did air defense for that country because we had given their airplanes to South Vietnam.
Okay. And how long were you in Taiwan?
That's there. I was there probably. We were rotating back and forth from getting some of the crews to Taiwan and back again. So I had probably a total time of 2 months or so there.
Okay. And then after Taiwan, you went where?
Okay, actually went back to Kadena in June through June '73, and then I was assigned back to George Air Force Base, California.
Okay. And when you were assigned back to George Air Force Base, you did what there?
Again, it was instructing crews to get combat ready in the F-4.
Okay. And how long were you there instructing again?
That I retired from there, so I was there from July 73 to January 74. And retired February 1, 74.
Okay. Now, when you retired, that was how many years were you in?
20 years.
You were in 20 years.
Right.
Okay. So, here's the big question of the day. Of all of the 20 years that you were in, what was the most memorable of those 20 years?
Most memorable was the time with the squadron on Okinawa Canadian Air Base because it was run so well by Colonel Don Parkhurst, our commander, and a great group of people.
Okay. And if you had a message for the future generation, what would that message be?
We have, there's a need, and we should be part of helping to solve the need.
Okay. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
I've been more impressed with the duties that the spouses have in this type of operation where at a moment's notice they may be totally in charge of the family and handle all aspects of it. And with the idea that you may not see your spouse again, that might be your, and when you get to a base overseas, they're part of welcoming the new arrivals to the squadron and getting them properly situated so that the pilots can take care of the duties. But to me, the spouses are pretty much a unappreciated group of people.
Right. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of us, we would like to thank you for your service. One last thing. Your uniform today is of what uniform?
It's for the Honor Guard, the Muskegon County Honor Guard. Today we were posting the colors at the Walker Arena where they have a program going on for veterans. And then other than that, it's generally military rights at funerals.
Mm-hmm. And how far do you do this?
Generally in Muskegon County.
Okay. And you do the colors for all veteran funerals?
There are military rights that we do at the funeral. It involves a commander and a chaplain doing speaking parts. It involves a rifleman, try to get 7 riflemen.
Okay, we're going to continue our conversation with Roger. He has some photos and documentation that he would like to share with us. Roger, what do you have there?
Okay, the main thing, this is a squadron, the 433rd, which was stationed in Yubon, Thailand. And this was taken in probably about May 1966. And between this time and a couple of months later, we lost Don King and Frank Ralston. Don is from Muskegon, and their plane it was a night mission, so it was difficult to know what happened, but they're considered still missing in action, declared dead. Sitting
Hold
in
on, okay, go ahead. Keep going. I'm
in
sorry.
the same row there is another crew that was shot down in the next couple of months from the time the picture was taken. They ended up in the Hanoi Hilton for 6.5 years.
Mhm.
And one of the person, he was a backseater at the time, was John Borland. When he was released from Hanoi Hilton, he went back to active duty, ended up as a general, and did rather impressive that they survived as well as they did in that. He
Right.
wrote a book from things that he had composed while he was in prison. He composed stories and poems, and he would tap it on the wall, their code to the adjacent cells. They would tap it to the following cells and such. And that's the group. I'm sitting on towards the end here. It's, yeah, second one in from that. So that was that squadron.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah,
Okay.
Navy number. And I was carrying a small camera. On this, it took 16 millimeter film in there, and from that you could have slides and such made. And so I used that during primarily with the time with the Army. And there were a couple of shots where I was in Vietnam. Correction, two of us went over to Thailand, flew missions for a while. That's that. But the rest of this was around the base that we were at on K. And when we got later on, this was getting ready for our first assault landing that I'd ever been on in a helicopter. He was my radio operator, and this 40-pound radio he was carrying didn't work. And I mean, basically, I was an infantryman, unqualified during the time. These pictures, and so these are getting set up for our first operation. Then it did a long lapse of time, and we had to move in from where we were into the Idrang Valley, where the other battalion was, the first of the 7th. So when he came in, this was Colonel Moore at his command post talking to people. Then the next pictures occurred after that when we were ambushed. And so here's some of us sitting down trying to figure out what our small group ought to be doing. Later on, other people drifted in, and we started out from maybe 15 people to about 30 there. Then after we had they got some more people coming in to support us, and we walked in and rejoined the main group. And we have a few pictures. The commander of the battalion and his intelligence officer trying to determine what all had gone on, because we had no reason to expect that the North Vietnamese troops were still around there. The next page. But this is Frank Henry. He was the operations officer for the battalion I was with, which was the 2nd and the 7th. And then he took a picture of me and didn't center it, but that's after 24 plus hours and such surviving things. But then from there we did move to another landing zone and were picked up. Guys are waiting to get on the helicopter. These are some pictures taken from the little observation plane we used, the O-1, which would have 4 rocket pods on the wings, and you'd go to your target area, and then you would shoot a rocket down to identify where the target is, and then you direct each airplane to where you should drop based on how the previous airplane did and such. We're flying over the same area where we were ambushed before. As a matter of fact, this is where our command group, it's just a group of trees, but that's where they were at the time. Just other general pictures, primarily when I was attached to the Army unit. The only pictures I took flying was, okay, maybe if I can find one picture. We went on a second operation after the Idrang Valley, and that was towards the coast in the Bonsan area. And I went with a group that was supposed to find all the bad guys. It turned out where we landed in this helicopter saw nobody was there. The rest of the battalion landed in a cemetery area, and they were kind of waiting for them there, so they had a rough time for a day or so. But one of the pictures that I took was of 2 soldiers are sitting behind a building because we're waiting for air support to take out the enemy that was in a pillbox ahead of us. One of the gentlemen was showing the other one a hole in his helmet where a round had clipped his ear and gone out through the back of his helmet.
Oh my goodness.
And just discussing that with I don't have that right handy now. To me, it's an impressive picture because it reminds me of some of the stuff. And I don't know where to put it. There's a lot of pictures. We got color film, so we had to work with, but it just shows kind of living people had for a while. These red spots that look like bombs going off are actually, the film was deteriorating, so it's not that. Okay. For the people that had landed in the cemetery and came under bad attacks, they had about 24 hours of pretty intense stuff, and so I came in after it was all over, but one of those guys was still sleeping here, trying to get caught up on sleep after that type of operation. Gotta find that picture. Okay. These are the 2 guys that are, this gentleman here is showing the other one his helmet with a hole in it. Came that close and this barely clipped his ear. I didn't really take many pictures flying except for one of the last missions I was on, and in that one I used actually a 35 millimeter and took these 3 pictures. These are coming back from a night mission. It's at dawn, so this one going southwest. Right? So you got the light from the dawn here, and this is what the other side of the dawn in the background here. This is just going underneath the airplane to get to the other side. And you can see planes that were painted black on the bottom because we're doing night missions. The paint was flaking off, and so a lot of it was white in areas and all. But anyway, 7 months of my Vietnam tour, I was dressed like this, and the rest of the time I was dressed like a pilot.
I was going to say, I thought you were a pilot.
Yeah. Some of these pictures showing refueling was taken later on when we were in California, and we were flying 2 F-4s to Korea to give to the Korean Air Force. But just showing the refueling, how refueling goes. And that's the way it went.
It's pretty amazing. Did you ever take, I don't know, I'm never been in that situation, so I don't know how you phrase it. Has your aircraft ever been shot?
It's never been hit.
You never hit.
Right. One of the first day missions I went on, our target was to be a bridge, a little bridge out in the middle of nowhere. And it was going to be one of these easy type targets. And so we were a flight of 4, I think I was number 4. And when the first 3 rolled in, dropped their bombs, by the time I got there, they had a gun emplacement very close by. So as I'm rolling in, I could see these little flashes of light going. And then they realized that it was sort of a trap. And so we were to get out of there. But meanwhile, I'm on a bomb run, trying to get permission to aim it at the guns rather than the bridge. And I threw bombs somewhere down there on the ground. I don't know where it ended up. But that's the only time that I was aware that I was being shot at. But on the night missions and all that, you don't know. You're too busy doing things.
So were most of your missions at night?
Most of them were at night. I had 1 month of day missions early on the time I was down there, and then the time from February through June were night missions.
And the reason for that was just harder to see you?
The primary thing we were doing was to try to stop supplies going into South Vietnam. So if we were bombing during the day, then they would try to move at night. So we would go out, generally flights of 2 airplanes. The first one had flares on and bombs. The second one all bombs. And he'd go up and he'd illuminate the area. There were 2 passes up in the mountains that they had to use, Magia Pass and Chapone, I believe was the other. And you'd go in with the 2 airplanes in trail. The first one would drop a set of flares, and then a second set of flares. Then he'd go up, climb up to his bombing altitude and start a left turnaround. The second plane would come in, and they would just work around this target area as long as the flares stayed illuminated. But it was to take care of any night movement of the enemy. So we were night owl squadron. That was our time to work at the targets.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think you pretty much explained everything to us. I appreciate that. Sorry for the second start.
So, no problem.